the academic excellence, policy and diplomacy thinking, and future leadership. It is a pleasure to have you here as part of our Model European Union Berlin side events. And it is an even greater privilege to welcome our distinguished guest, Ambassador Jan Tombiski, Head of Mission of the Polish Embassy, Ambassador Alexander Marschnik of Austria in Germany, Deputy Head of Mission Francisco Ulloa of Chilean Embassy in Berlin, and Deputy Head of Mission and Chancellor Izmir Talic from the Embassy of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as our moderator Amelia from the Forum of Young Diplomats of Poland. Thank you for joining us and breaking the real world of diplomacy into this academic space. The Hattier School stands for exactly that, writing, theory and practice. It prepares masters and PhD students to take on complex challenges in public policy, international affairs and governance. So having today's forum here is more than symbolic. It's a reflection of what we try to achieve. Events like the MEU Berlin, to connect academic curiosity with a real-world decision shaping our world. This year, MEU emphasized that Europe cannot afford to look inwards. Its values and partnerships must extend beyond its borders, whether that means building connections in Latin America, Asia, working closely with neighbor countries, even if they're not EU members, or rethinking diplomacy in an age of global uncertainty. Diplomacy today is not just an easy task. It has to manage crisis, navigate mistrust, and do all of this in a world that moves faster than ever. And yet, it remains one of the most powerful tools we have for peace, for cooperation, for dialogue, and for understanding each other across borders. This forum isn't just about hearing from experienced diplomats. It's about learning from them, for all of us, but especially for the next generation of diplomats and public thinkers who are here in this room. So thank you again for being here with us. We're excited to have you here, and we're excited about the conversation who is coming afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Manu. Honorable speakers, dear guests, dear participants, welcome to Diplomats Night at MEU Berlin 2025, an evening of diplomacy, dialogue, and global connection. The theme of this evening is the importance of diplomacy in our world, the challenges that diplomacy faces. I would like to start our discussion with a couple of general questions. The first one, how do you define the role of diplomacy in today's multipolar and often fragmented world? Your Excellency, maybe we can start with you here.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Emilia. Thank you also for having us here. I have to say that I am very, very amazed and very, very impressed by the fact that on a Friday afternoon you have a full room of young people here who are still, after I understand a whole week of or more or less battling it out in the diplomatic fields, you still have the stamina to sit through a panel of four ties. I also made a pledge once that I would never be on a panel where there are only men. So I'm very happy that you are here. That's very important, Emilia. Thank you. You asked what defines diplomacy in today's world. And I have to say, I think one of the things that I think you have to do when you are a diplomat, or you have to realize when you think about becoming a diplomat, be flexible. I think we are living in very changing times. So I think an interest in history is good, but will not be enough. I think an interest in international affairs and international relations are good, but are not going to be enough. You are going to have to think on your feet. You're going to have to be extremely flexible and inventive in your work, in your daily exercise. I think we are witnessing a multitude of challenges, a multitude of threats to our international system, to our way of life at the moment. And it is the biggest, I think, biggest function of diplomacy in these times to help us maneuver through this time with as little conflict and as little pain and as little misery as possible. Should we?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we all have our own microphones. Please click there and yeah.
No, yes, yes, it works. Well, thank you very much, and I may join into the thanks of our friend from Austria for having us here at this panel with this caveat that only 4 men are sitting here, but there are other diplomats here in the room, so we'll probably ask you also to join us to be with us on the panel. The question is not only flexibility, but curiosity. As diplomats must be very curious in understanding what's going on around us. And if I'm sharing with our younger colleagues who prepare for being diplomats, I'm telling them, try to do 2 things. First, understand that you work not for an administration, but for people. Because our jobs are paid by our taxpayers. So we shall always try to understand whether this what I'm doing or what I am writing serves also our citizens. And second is try not to compete with media. Try to understand the root causes of different developments and be courageous in making some predictions. Don't be afraid of making wrong predictions. Everyone makes mistakes, but try to imagine what the situation you are observing currently is leading into in the future, to be a little bit ahead of events. Try to project yourself into the future, to see what the situation may produce in 3 months, half a year. And try also to formulate warnings. If everything goes well, we all are fine. If something goes wrong, then we will always be asked, why were we not enough courageous or enough wise to predict what may come? So also try to focus on possible negative scenarios.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very much also for my predecessors in this round of discussion on how can we be still, let's say, have a bigger role in today's foreign policy. I think it's utmost importance that diplomacy still has a play in today's circumstances in this world. I would say that together with the traditional roles that diplomacy has, negotiation, communication, representation, protection when it comes to consular affairs, for instance, I think what it will be needed, it's more, I would say, innovation, entrepreneurship in finding solutions. We will have a world in which certain given circumstances or parameters, the international order, is already being questioned. And we will have to be partnering and being innovative in finding new solutions with maybe that not usual suspect as partners. And that I come to my presence here because we are not an European country. We are not a member of the European Union and not applying to that. But I think that also reflects the need to have this open-mindedness of looking into other areas of the world in which you find friends, in which you find partners with shared values. And I think that's a little bit the way in which we like to see also in the future the foreign relations, because we will need more of this. We will need more to think not only in the regional vicinity, but overseas. And then you can see in the case of Chile, a truly partner that we can, you can trust on. We have with the European Union, we have an agreement since 2003. We have renovated this agreement. And the trade part is in force since February this year. So which is also really good news. We are surrounded now by very bad news recently. But this negotiation took place on an equal basis, on a win-win situation for the European Union and for Chile. And we have a new version of this association with the European Union. In the case of Chile, that's the closest relationship that you can have, not being European, not being EU candidate. That's the one that you have between Chile and the European Union. It's not only a free trade agreement, it's a political association. And I think that's the contribution that I can do it from the global south, so to say, that we can do that together and we can be a little bit more innovative in how we can approach common topics, common challenges together. And in this agreement, we have several different chapters, including food waste, just to name some of them, international peace and security, human rights was already there from before, gender and trade. That was the first chapter of gender and trade for the European Union whatsoever with any other country when it comes to an agreement. So this is the kind of thing that we have to push ourselves a little bit more and try to do things in a different way or to think things in a different way.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. So it is very good to be the last one. You know, everything good was said already, and I can just say I agree with them. It's a great pleasure. It is a huge pleasure to be this evening here with you, and I chose to Austrian ambassador on a meaning Friday evening, young people, and our colleague, of course, from another embassies to be here. It is a privilege to be a part of this very important topic, let's say. To talk about diplomacy in a present time, it is very, I would say very difficult. Conventional diplomacy is gone or not? Is it non-conventional diplomacy? Is it something fancy now or not? Already at the time when if the official institution are somewhere, let's say somewhere else, decision makers are around of us. When I remember the time, my first diplomatic post, I was scared a lot. My first diplomatic post was in Republic of Slovenia. Thank you. And it was something that really makes me very, very nervous. And my first meeting was with General Secretary from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And he said, don't be afraid, you know, it is nothing special. You will just laugh if you won't cry. You have to eat if you don't like that. You have to drink if you don't like that. And that is diplomacy. I look at him, what is he talking about? But actually all those, you know, Bosnia and Herzegovina has something special. We have now 2 countries from European Union, member of European Union, 1 country is not, and 1 aspirant to European Union. And a very heavy topic in my country is about diplomacy, because, you know, we are post-conflict country. We are still 30 years is gone, and we are still in fight to find a right place for us, even in European Union, and that is no question. So our aspiration to European Union and NATO are non-questions. That is something that we are agree. So I will stop now. Hope that I give you some answer that you have expected. Thank you.
Thank you for all of your contribution. Okay. No, thank you for all of your contribution. And now I would like to continue with the challenges, because without a doubt we are living in a very tough, very difficult times, very dynamic times in international relations. That's why I would like to ask you, honorable speakers, what do you see as the greatest challenge facing diplomacy in a 21st century, and how it can be addressed? Very difficult question, I assume.
This is, I think, the greatest challenge is answering questions like these, because you can only get it wrong, because, of course, the various different issues and challenges have proponents and constituencies, and by naming another one, you automatically lose everyone else, and thereby you've already lost in the art of diplomacy. But I think the biggest challenge for diplomacy, and this is, I have to stress, my personal opinion, and everything I say tonight is my personal opinion, because I hear that we are being live streamed, just to make sure that I'm speaking on a personal capacity and not for Austria this evening. I think the biggest challenge for diplomacy is that guy over there, that guy back there. Yeah, the one looking at the cell phone while we're having this thing here. I think the biggest problem is that nowadays people are all in their phones, living parallel next to each other. We don't really have a consensus anymore of what the world is. Everyone has their own world. You have your friends, you watch your shows, you see your truth as you choose it, you want it to be. I spent the last 4.5 years as the Austrian representative in New York at the UN. There were 3 worlds at the UN. There was the Western world, which was dominated by the Russian aggression against Ukraine. There was the Russian world, which was a world where the West was enforcing dreadful values on the rest and expanding its empire. And there was the world of the global South, if you want, the rest, who lived in a world where there was constant oppression and poverty and extreme challenges that had to be overcome. And you could live in your world without really engaging with anyone else. You could live in your world relying on your truths, on your facts, on your own narrative, and completely be shielded from everyone else's world. And it's increasingly difficult in this atmosphere to actually have negotiations, diplomacy, which requires you to interact with one another. But you have to interact on common understandings. And if there is no longer a common understanding of what's actually happening, then it's very difficult. And at the moment, we're really having a breakdown of our understanding of what reality is. Some of the big problems that they're facing now, if you follow the discussions about trying to create peace in the Middle East or peace in Ukraine, is that there is no real agreement on what the situation actually is like, because people have been buying into their own propaganda, into their narratives, and as a result, we no longer really have it easy to talk to one another. And if we live in a world which is compounded in a sort of my state first, unilateralist attitude, where I actually don't really care about the other one as much as I'm interested in increasing my own advantage on the cost of others, what that means is that we're moving from a system of everyone works together, we solve our conflicts peacefully, the small ones get support through the system and are protected from the excess power of the big ones. That system gets lost in a world where everyone only seeks their own advantage and doesn't seek cooperation. So in my view, that is the biggest danger. We'll end up with 3 or 4 big states or alliances that have a sphere of interest where they squeeze everyone within this system for like a protection racket for support and money and try to get as much out of it as possible, and are left alone within their sphere of interest. And those big powers rearrange the world as they see fit, if they want to, or they can coexist more or less peacefully next to each other. That's a very difficult world for diplomats and for diplomacy, especially multilateral diplomacy. So how do we address that? In one sentence, we try to counter that, of course. We hope and enlist young people to push up against that and work against that and try to get people out of their smartphone individualized world into the wider world where everyone basically has to deal with the same challenges.
Now I see why I was right to sit on the second chair, not on the first chair, and I may subscribe to everything what has been said, and probably to illustrate it with examples from my diplomatic life. In 2004, Poland became member of the European Union. We were very proud of it, and I had a meeting together with other ambassadors at the Diplomatic Academy in Paris. There were several colleagues, ambassadors from African countries. And one of these ambassadors, after us showing our joy of becoming member of the European Union, stood up and said, "Colleagues, we congratulate you from Africa, but we in Africa, we are orphans of the bipolar world. This world is gone. During the Cold War, during the bipolar division of world, we knew that if something went wrong in our countries, it was enough to detect who was behind, Russia or United States behind. And if we detected that one of two was behind of difficult situations in our country, we had to call others to protect us, and they fixed the situation. Now the situation is gone. And we in Africa, we are orphans of the Cold War and the bipolar world. This was for me an eye-opener, that our perspective is not the only one that you may take on what happens in the world. And since then, I try always to listen at others, to understand their reasoning, not in order to accommodate my position only to the position of others, but to find arguments that explain my position as Polish ambassador with words that others would understand in universal terms. So this is something that is, for me, one of the biggest challenges, to formulate our position in universally understood terms, words, and with parallels to what happens in other parts of the world, to show that we are acting probably locally, but we are thinking globally. This is one of the big, big lessons for diplomacy now. Thank you.
Well, from my point of view, I mean, it just we'll continue somehow with the previous intervention, saying like I would say that from what we see or what I see as the biggest threat is actually the collapse of the current international order as we have built up in the last 80 years. Especially for countries like mine, I mean, if you don't have a rules-based international order, that means that your position as a country itself is under threat, so to say, because the rule that one vote, one country, in reality, in practical terms, it's not running anymore. So the biggest countries with the biggest weapon systems and so on, they will have the ones or the biggest or more efficient economic tools. They will be determine how the way the world will be shaped. Some may say this actually has been the case always in the world. Yes, that could be a point. But we diplomats, we don't work as we'd say under that premise. We work towards a common goal, towards a common platform of understanding, which ultimate the reflection is the United Nations. So I would say, if you add to that situation of current conflicts, in which bigger states are not longer respecting agreements, not respecting boundaries, and you add to that the climate crisis, and you add to that the poverty, and then you add to add the technologies challenges, we will face a situation that will have several multiple challenges for diplomacy in every corner of the world. And as the previous intervention said, Ambassador of Poland said, for the Global South, it has a very different implication and a very strong implication. You can see also the consequences of climate change if you think about Sudan and South Sudan, how that is already creating internal conflicts in those areas. So, and that pushes, again, another pressure to this international order. So if you start to describe this whole situation, of course, we can be really negative here. But to end with a positive note or trying to be willingness, so to say, positive voice, is that precisely the countries that we still believe on the system and that we still believe that we can work together, we have to unite more than before. Because the task that we have now, it's even larger than before. And if we don't uphold the system by ourselves, nobody's going to do that. So I would say we have even more work to do. We have to be, as I said before, more creative as well. But I'm also a person that at the end try to be optimistic, and I think I still believe in human nature, and we can face this challenge together. So I will end with that positive note.
Or yes, yes. Yeah. You know, all that what said the previous speaker. It's now something that I want to put in a position of a small state. For example, the small state like Bosnia, where we can find us now in this multipolar world. It is well known that the small states have weak economies or small economies or not developed diplomacy, for example, or even they are try to be the member of some alliance. They won't try to be they won't join to any kind of part where they can be a little bit stronger, where they can put their voice to be heard. And that is something that belongs, or for example, one of the challenges in a diplomacy, artificial intelligence, what the ambassador says. The man, you can see now, it is scary. Actually, it is very good. It is perfect. It is something that we need, but it is scary. I suppose that all of us, or many of us, have seen how the Donald Trump be catched or from the police. Or if I have heard some of the new videos with the voices of the people I know. And if you look at that, you are totally, or you are 100% sure that they are. So that is this person, and it is not. One of the challenge can be where we can then find this conventional diplomacy in all this world. What we can do to bring back the conversation face to face. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And now I would like to change maybe the order of the speakers. Yeah, so I will start. No, I will start with His Excellency Tombiński. I have a question about the successes and the diplomatic crisis. So, what lessons has your country learned from recent diplomatic crisis or successes that might be useful for others?
Very difficult questions. The biggest crisis are wars, actually, and this is always a very sad feeling and feeling of failure if we see that situations we were engaged ended by a war and not by a peaceful solution. This is probably the biggest failure. I was EU ambassador in Ukraine 2012-2016, so during the first episode of this war, and even we did everything we couldn't at that time. I was really saddened that the situation then degenerated in a war, because we did not imagine that a country as Russia could wage a war against another friendly country for a very simple reason, that this country wanted to sign an open, negotiated agreement with the European Union without any security clauses, without secret clauses. It was a very open, trade and regulated oriented agreement on association with the European Union. And Russia decided to start a war against Ukraine. The other situation I was confronted with was the situation in Bosnia. I was Polish ambassador in Sarajevo, 96, 98, immediately after the war ended. And to see how much we failed internationally in helping Bosnia to be today a normally functioning, integrated country is a failure of diplomacy. 30 years gone since Dayton agreements and Rambouillet agreements end of 95, and still this country is, it's sad to say, still not in a position to be a normally functioning country. This is a failure of diplomacy. This is a failure of international community. It's more difficult to talk about successes because successes are more relative than failures. Failures are easier to define. From Polish point of view, a huge success was the transformation from the communist regime to a democracy, free market. And I belong to this generation that had this historical chance to shape Polish transformation from first Solidarność period 1980-81 until we joined NATO and the European Union. This is, from Polish perspective, it's probably the biggest success of last 3 centuries that we had.
Thank you. So maybe, Your Excellency.
Should we go along this?
Okay. Okay. So maybe Minister Jola. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, you can make a long list of failures and also successes if you want. I'm gonna put it in terms of not mentioning a case of the European context, but a case that you would know. I would say that in the recent years, the situation in Venezuela could be named as a failure of international action. As you know, there is a dictatorship there in Venezuela, and we agreed to act internationally with diplomatic tools in order to make pressure that the Maduro regime will step down and eventually Venezuela will become a fully democratic country. Back then, there was the attempt of Guaido to get the position of head of government. And then afterwards, we created the Group of Lima. And after that, it was created the contact group, which included also European partners, that we were always trying to push for international pressure towards the regime in order for them to call for free, fair, and open elections. Eventually, the case was not successful. And you can see that until nowadays, Maduro is there. And we're facing a situation in Latin America also that we have got support from the European Union and other partners, in which you have over 2-3 million Venezuelans refugees throughout the whole continent. So it has created also a refugee crisis for all of us. The burden is in a lot of countries in the region, including mine. But you can see we try to do our best to receive these refugees and so on. We created also a special type of visa. It was called the democratic visa protection. So we were granted for all the Venezuelans being persecuted to come to Chile. But nowadays you can see the situation. It's, I would say, yeah, the countries are under limit to receive more refugees, and the problem is that there is no sight that Maduro will go out from the government and power in Venezuela. So what is the lesson that you have there behind? Is that diplomatic tools, sanctions, they have a ceiling. Unfortunately, it's like that. And you can put and coordinate all these different measures, but there's always going to be a ceiling. And that ceiling can be broken by economic tools or military tools. Let's say if a given country is already exporting 100% their goods and services as the way they have done it as is the same as before. So you're not hurting that country economically or the regime at all. So if you don't have effective measures there, there will be no greater changes in the country. Or if you don't have military threats also is not going to be the case. I'm talking about UN-validated military actions, by the way. But and if I turn it now into positive case of success, I would say, of our foreign policy, I would say is that the network of agreements that we have, especially free trade agreements. If you put Chile in the context of European countries, we are a country that does not belong to any kind of a regional integration process. We belong as observers in everyone, but we're not 100% part of each. So we negotiate with everyone, and that has created for us, where you see the export structures of Chile. Now it's a little bit different. We can talk about this later, but before traditionally it was 30% of our exports to Asia, 30% to Americas, 30% to Europe and Africa. So it was really balanced. So when we had the economic crisis, we could cope that fairly easy, so to say. The current situation now is different from this traditional situation that we had, thanks to these free trade agreements. But even now, as you can see, free trade agreements are not something written on gold or on stones. There are some countries also not respecting what is written on the agreements.
Agree. Maybe we can stay with that part of our discussion. Maybe, Minister, you can say more about your perspective of diplomatic crisis and successes.
Yeah, I try to be very, very short. So, 90s, ex-Yugoslavia, which was a very strong country, very, very strong, very important country, not just in Europe, so around the world. It will be transformed, let's say. And the president of the presidency at that time of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Alija Izetbegovic, with his staff, and with the president of Macedonia, Kiro Gligorov, tried to convince other presidents of the, at that time, republics of ex-Yugoslavia to stay in some kind of federation, but with a different type of positions, different type of strengthening in the same country. And the diplomacy failed. The war started. So our war started in 92. In 91, again, the president of the presidency, which he's with a couple of diplomats from the ex-Yugoslavia, tried to explain the world what is going on. And the Bosnia and Herzegovina in December voted for, in October 91, voted for sovereignty, and in March 92 for us independent state. And the diplomacy won because the Bulgaria recognized Bosnia and Herzegovina before the referendum. So I try now to just to say some examples of fail and good things from the diplomacy. Thank you very much, Ambassador, that you mentioned Dayton Agreement, that you have mentioned that actually the diplomacy failed a lot, make a huge mistake, because Dayton Agreement makes a very good things, stop the war, stop the suffering, stop the killing, stop the very, very bad things that happened. But we are still, Dayton Agreement has more obstacles than the possibilities to develop a country in a normal European country. And that is our problem. Decision makers, we have, for example, if you, I just gonna try to explain you how look at that foreign policy, decision maker. Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina with 3 members, every of them is representative of majority national group in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who has to hear the voice from the presidency and to fulfill the obligation from the presidency, and another state institutions. And in divided society, it is very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, His Excellency, please.
Crisis for my country, I think, crisis and success. Okay, so crisis first. I mean, Austria, fairly small, neutral country, not member of any military alliance. We rely for the safety of our citizens on 2 things: the Austrian army and international law and the international system. For us, therefore, having a permanent member of the Security Council attack another member of the United Nations in order to annex part of its territory, that's a shock. That is a failure of the system, a system that is there to protect Austria and to protect our citizens. So for us, that is and still remains a huge crisis, one that has to be solved because it shows that the international system, one that we rely on for our safety, is no longer reliable. And we therefore put a lot of diplomatic effort into trying to reform, trying to make the system more reliable, trying to make the system work in a way that we can sleep better. So that is a big crisis and one big challenge that we're facing right now. Big success. I think this year we're celebrating 30 years of Austrian membership in the European Union. Most of you who, if you are from Europe or from the EU at least, most of you will know that as your daily life. And I think for many Austrians, younger generation now also, they can't imagine a world without the EU. But I think for me, I can, and I can tell you, for every one of our citizens, really all of our citizens, especially young people, mobile people, people who are ready to invest and people who are interested and have an open mind, the EU is an incredible opportunity and a fantastic success story. And so therefore, for us, that is, I think, for the country as a whole, having this very complicated, extremely complicated legal system set up in order to make the lives of citizens better, that is something that really I would count as probably the most important success story for Austria in the past decades.
Thank you all. So now, small interruption. So now I would like to continue with country-specific questions. However, I would like to say that please, dear guests, dear participants, to prepare your questions because in a couple of minutes you are going to have the opportunity to ask these questions directly to our speakers. Nevertheless, I will start with a minister from Chile because today it's the great opportunity to learn more about the role of the Latin America in a global diplomacy. That's why I would like to ask you a question: how Chile advocate for the regional interest on the world stage?
Well, I would say that it's basically also because as we define ourselves as a small country, we believe on the multilateral system, and when it comes to global challenges, we try to take over what is the responsibility of those words. And in doing so, we try to bring together what is the voice of the Global South and make a bridge between the two spheres of or groups of countries. I have some specific cases. For instance, Climate Club. We are part of Climate Club. That's an initiative launched by Germany during the G7 presidency. When Federal Chancellor Olaf Scholz went to Chile 2023, he invited us to become member of Climate Club and to exercise the co-presidency together with Germany. So we have stand up to the invitation. We are still now co-chairs of the Climate Club. We have 46 countries now joining, together with Austria, with Poland and others. And for those of you who do not know about Climate Club, it's an initiative of like-minded countries that would like to push the climate agenda in a faster pace in order to reach the Paris Agreement before it's too late. And when we do that, we try to, as being co-chaired, always to be the ones that is making the bridges to the Global South members, to emerging and developing economies, and to raise their voices or to try to make them more participative, because of course there is asymmetry when it comes to technological capacities of each countries. That is one aspect. Other aspects in which we have been working very hard for international challenges is on the so-called the feminist foreign policy. We have officially, since 3 years, this government has announced PEF, in Spanish terms. And in New York, we were co-chairing the group of friends of feminist foreign policies, also trying to bring more and more countries from the global south and partnering with countries of developed economies. And we exercised that chairmanship together also with Germany, and now it's on the hands of Spain and Mexico. This is just to give you some examples. We're also working really hard on BBNJ. We were one of the countries pushing for the final negotiation of BBNJ. That is an international agreement for the protection and the uses of high seas in the world. And in that sense, we're also fighting now for hosting the Secretariat of the BBAJ in Chile, in Valparaiso. So those are examples in which, from your reality, from your perspective, you try to address together with other countries to international challenges.
Yes. Thank you. So now I would like to ask a question for a minister from Bosnia and Herzegovina, because your country is aspiring for EU membership. And at the very beginning, I wanted to ask you a question about the obstacles that you need to face, that your country need to face during that process. However, now I would like to ask you how your country is engaging with Brussels, as well as with neighboring countries to accelerate the integration.
So we don't have problem with Brussels.
Yeah, but how?
I don't know. So in any case, so the percentage of support for Bosnia and Herzegovina between the citizens, of course, to be the member of EU is still on a high level. We are now on approximately 71%. I have to say a little bit more in a federation than in Republika Srpska, but approximately, let's say, 71%. And that is a huge percentage, really, because we are aware what is, our place is in the EU. And we want to be, that is one of the goal of the foreign policy for Bosnia and Herzegovina. And that is let's say, no questions. We don't have a problem with Brussels. We have problem in our country because the last 14 priorities given by Brussels to us to go forward in a negotiation process are still somewhere. And one of the biggest obstacle is actually our structure. I told you it is for foreign policy decision we need the decision from the all three members of presidency. They are different interests. But for us, at the moment, is most important this regional cooperation and our connection to our neighbor countries. We are really aware and we are really trying to have a good neighbor relations. In fact, in a whole history, you cannot find that the Bosnia and Herzegovina has attacked any kind, any another country, not in the region and in around the world. And we need really open discussion about it, and we need really, let's say, positive feeling from our neighbor countries to go forward. One of really good things is Berlin process that makes really good, let's say, good things for all of us in a Western Balkan, and I'm very. Thank you very much, Germany, for supporting that and to have an idea about the Berlin process. If you ask me now, at the moment, is much more important to have these good neighbor relations than to go forward with EU case. Maybe it looks a little bit pity, but you know, if you don't have good relations with your neighbor, then everything else doesn't have sense.
Thank you very much. So now I would like to ask a question for Your Excellency Tombiński, maybe. Yeah, I would like to ask you because Poland recently has taken a particularly big effort in regional security concerns, especially the war in Ukraine and transatlantic relations. And I have a question: how is Polish diplomacy adapting to the evolving security landscape in Central Eastern Europe? And what role does Poland see for itself in shaping the future of the European and NATO diplomacy?
First, allow me to correct you. I'm quite allergic to the formula, the war in Ukraine. This is not a war in Ukraine. This is an aggression of Russia against Ukraine. If we say a war in Ukraine, we put the aggressor outside of the picture. We need to state clearly the nature of the conflict, and this is a war of aggression of one country against another sovereign country. For Poland, this challenge is of existential importance. First, we have a common border with Russia. Some people forget it. We have a border with Kaliningrad region, which is Russia, with a huge, enormous depot of weapons and actually a military region of Russia. Second, we have another larger border with Belarus, which is now so closely cooperating with Russia and actually dominating also in terms of security by Russian interests. And we have more than 500 kilometers external border of the European Union with Ukraine, and this is through Polish borders that 80% of international supply in military terms is transferred to Ukraine. Therefore, our security very much depends on the development in the East. Logically, Poland has increased spendings on security and defense. Since we joined NATO 25 years ago, we were still on this level of 2% of GDP spendings on security, but now the spendings are getting much higher, closer to 5% this year. With this understanding, it's better to spend now 5% than in 2 or 3 years 15% on security and defense. We wish to make the country strong enough to show to a possible enemy, and Russia clearly shows that the target is not the Ukraine, the target is Europe, the target is Poland also, not to be even in a thinking of attacking us. Therefore, we need to get stronger. What is most important, and we probably did still overlook this question in our discussion. One of the biggest challenges is to create a national consensus on the general strategies for the foreign policy and security security of the country. This is probably now the biggest investment on a political level in Poland to ensure that these questions of security are dealt with by consensual agreement of most of political forces in Poland, because this is something that gives us strong. If country is divided, then country is weak. Therefore, we need to invest in this national consensus on this issue.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. So now I have a question, because the final question to you, Your Excellency. Because as far as everyone knows, Austria is a neutral country. And I would like to ask you, how does the neutrality of Austria shape the diplomacy of your country, and especially during the global conflicts, the global military conflicts, such as Russia's full aggression against Ukraine. However, now we have also trade war. So could you tell us what is the position of your country, the Austria, the neutral country?
Yes, well, thank you. Well, I should have kept the answer that I gave the last time for this question. That would have made it more easy, then I would immediately have something to say. But I think, yes, it's true, Austria is a neutral country, and it's a neutral country by constitutional law, so it's very much enshrined in our Selbstverständnis, in the way that we see ourselves, and very much also ingrained in the public mind and in the public also emotional sphere. But at the end of the day, it is a legal commitment that we have undergone, and it means two things. It means that there shall be no foreign troops stationed on Austrian soil in a permanent manner, and that we may not participate in an ongoing conflict with military means. So those are the two things that we fulfill in our foreign policy. If you look at foreign policy of Austria, though, which has been very, very constant from 1955, since when we regained our independence, until this year, we have had a very, very strong international engagement. The fact that we are neutral does not mean that Austrian soldiers do not serve abroad, for example, because we have decided that if the United Nations gives a Security Council mandate under Chapter 7, then we are absolutely in line with internationally, legally also participating in peace missions, in peacekeeping operations, in peace building activities. So therefore, we have had over 100,000 Austrian servicemen and women serving in UN, EU, and OSCE mandated missions in order to participate actively also in international peace building efforts. So it shows that even as a neutral country, you can be very much involved. That doesn't mean that it's easy for a neutral country in cases of actual conflicts on how to decide. And here also, what we use very much is that we see that we are limited by our constitution, which is the two cases that I mentioned. But apart from these two things that we may not, of course, undertake, that leaves a lot of possibilities. So we are now actively, for example, in the case of Ukraine, supporting Ukraine, not with military means, but with a lot of other assistance that Ukraine needs. We are also, of course, also involved in a lot of humanitarian measures, for example, in the Middle East. We are also involved traditionally, and this is where neutral states actually come in handy and are useful in mediation efforts. There are a lot of meetings happening in Vienna. Some of them are well known and on TV, and we have the UN there in Vienna, and we have OSCE in Vienna, and we have other institutions and organizations there serving in order to serve as a center offering good offices, host for conferences and all that. But also a lot of things happening behind closed doors, out of the public view, where we mediate and where we try to support countries that have difficulties in overcoming these and finding peaceful ways forward. So in a way, yes, it is sometimes difficult because we have certain limitations, but this has not prevented us from being very clear in our foreign policy and very clear in the manner of supporting a victim against an aggressor, and also very clear in being helpful and supportive when we look for efforts to overcome conflict.
Thank you very much for all of your contributions. So now I would like to ask you, dear participants, and especially I would like to please the Chancellor of Slovenia to make a statement.
Thank you. Speaking of challenges, I was challenged by the ambassador of Austria to have a word on the challenges, and I was also challenged by my colleague on feminist foreign policy, as well as on the enlargement of the EU. So Slovenia is a member of NATO, member of EU, currently is a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for the second year. We were chairing in September last year, and we will be chairing also in December this year. It's quite exceptional that we will be chairing twice in the 2 years mandate. We are trying to be an honest broker, and we are dealing with all the issues that have been mentioned today. But this is the UN level. And as the ambassador of Bosnia and Herzegovina mentioned on Tuesday, Model UN is also an important gathering, and we are very happy that Model EU is also taking place, and we very much welcome that. As regards the feminist foreign policy, Slovenia is very much involved, also with other countries and with the host country, Germany. Speaking of that, we are taking it really seriously because we have a female president, female speaker of the parliament, and female minister of foreign affairs. And we have like 50% or even more female ambassadors, and not to mention the deputies, I guess even more. Yeah, that's my next issue with the enlargement. I'm here on behalf of the ambassador, Dr. Anna Polak-Petric. I'm still chargé d'affaires today, otherwise I'm deputy. She is contributing a podcast on the female foreign policy and the role of women in diplomacy, politics, and so on. So you're really welcome to have a look at it. And then speaking also of women and their contribution and their role in the EU, we have the Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos. She's an experienced diplomat. Slovenia is also trying to be an honest broker, and we are very much in favor of the enlargement, not only Western Balkans, but they've been waiting very long. But still, on the condition that conditions should be met, and it's a merit-based process. But as regards Slovenia, we have been chairing the Council of the EU in the first half of 2008, and I was privileged to be in London at that time. It was a different kind of Council of the EU. And I was also privileged to be here in Germany, to be in trio with Germany and Portugal, here in 2021, second half, the Council of the EU. So, and in Geneva, I was also during our presidency of the Human Rights Council. And at that time, Slovenia was also dealing with numerous issues. So, wishing you all the luck, and I hope your meetings were very successful, and that you will take this opportunity to really to try to get a more in-depth insight into the work, the opportunities of the EU, diplomacy should be making bridges and not walls. And I'm sure you know who said that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And of course, we don't have a lot of time. However, yeah, I think that we still have a couple of minutes to ask maybe 3 questions. So yeah, maybe I will start from from that side. Here you are.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just stand up so everyone can see me more appropriately. Firstly, thank you. Thank you to Your Excellencies and councillors for this wonderful panel. It was very informative, and it's always very appreciated that you have been taking your time to talk with us. My name is Alex Hermann. I'm one of the participants here, and on the side, I study political science at the Free University of Berlin. And my question has an academic nature to it. In my studies, I focus a lot on international relations, analyzing why do countries act the way they do, and to a certain extent attempting to predict how countries might act in the future. And in IR theory, we often discuss big, grand theories, realism, liberalism, each and every one trying to find this universal formula to determine how countries will act. Do they only think defensively, militarily? Do they only care about resources? Is it only if they are in the global south? Is it about market dynamics, so on and so forth? Which is why I found the different perspectives very interesting brought by all of you, and which is why I'm curious, why do you believe that there are so many contradicting theories in academia represented by people from across the world, all of which predict something else? And if there is maybe some truth to them, but something that still explains why some people are so certain that everything is about hard power, and others are so certain everything is about if you're a global south country or a global north country. Thank you.
So, yeah, I think so. No, I think that we will please answer now the question, and now we will listen the additional.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I think it's a kind of a core question that every social scientist will have in his or her mind. We have learned the different scholars, the international relations, realism, idealism, liberalism, and so on. But at the end, I think you can one thing that you can realize is that human behavior, human thinking is not 100% predictable. You can have some patterns, you can have some kind of modelings, but at the very end, it's a kind of frustrating, very good intellectual process, but it's frustrating at the same time, I would say. There is this book of Rosanton Mearsheimer, How States Think. And on that book, they go on and on and on this, what is the rationality of countries to make decisions. And at the very end, they conclude what is very raw and nature-based. Yeah, it depends. And sometimes it is irrational. But they try to look into some rationality technique or something behind those decisions. But you can see that depending on the perspective of what scholar you follow, school you follow, then you have the different results, I would say. And that's also the part that belongs to this challenge of dealing with diplomacy. And also that is something that we have not discussed so much about artificial intelligence here. But the problem is also that sometimes rationality will guide you to a certain pattern, to a certain way, but at the end, you see as a human being as you are, that's the not most convenient solution that you have in front of you, because you're considering other elements like emotions, but also history. And I think if you want to predict somehow how countries will make decisions, take a look always on history. History tells you a lot what a country might behave in the future. Not maybe directly on the first place, but on the second, third round. And it's usually not a copy-paste, it's an evolution of that, or a devolution. But certain elements you can find there. And that can give you some tips in which way it will go.
Thank you very much. Would you like to add anything? Or shall we go to the next? Okay, thanks.
I love this question because I spent 7 years teaching international law at the University of Vienna before joining the foreign ministry. So I love this sort of question because we spent hours and hours debating why haven't we, through civilization and all of the academic, scientific evolution we've gone through, come up with better theories to predict the future, because essentially that's what most of what we do at the universities is trying to find ways to grapple with what will happen in the future, because whoever knows what will happen in the future obviously has a fantastic advantage. Imagine the stock market if you knew what would happen in the future. So, and big professors at these universities are those who have managed to convince their universities that their theories are better in predicting the future. That sells books, gets you promoted to a chair at an important institute and an academic institution. So yes, you're trying to sell the future in a way, and yet it all falls short. It doesn't work. If anybody had the formula, if everyone was able to predict more closely what would happen, of course, first of all, you wouldn't have to study anymore because it would all be obviously what would happen anyway. We would all be out of a job because who needs diplomats if everything was certain or we knew what was going to happen? And so in a way, we have to be grateful that this big uncertainty exists in our life because it all enables us to continue working. I think one of the things that you can do, however, is, and I think you mentioned it, learn from the past. So studying history and looking back is important. Also keeping in mind that every state, every individual normally acts in their national interest. And by projecting this, I think you can somehow try to achieve, to come up with expectations that in a normal system work. But that is why we actually do put together this system, why we have organizations, why we have legal rules, because legal rules enhance predictability. International systems, they serve us to give us predictability. If you look at the United Nations, for example, or also the European Union, every year is identical. You have the General Assembly in September at the UN, the meetings on the committees and the 6 committees happen in the fall, the special commissions and committees work in the first half of the year, and then everything comes back together. And by doing this over and over again, we try to predict the future, and we try to give ourselves some reassurance, because by doing the exact same thing as we did last year, we must be doing it right? Because we weren't wrong last year, and it seems to give us comfort, because people, humans, love repetition. Every one of us does one day similarly to the next. We always look for differences, but essentially our weeks are the same. We eat, we work, we eat, we work, we eat, we sleep. And we do that every day, and as long as we do the same thing over and over again, we have a prediction of how the next day may be that gives us comfort, security, and in a way this repetitiveness helps us overcome a world that otherwise would be full of incertitude. And therefore, I think here also, look at patterns of the past. This is what humans will automatically try to redo, and therefore, looking at the past, looking at national interests is the best way to try to get an idea of what the future might hold.
Thank you very much.
To this fantastic plaidoyer, I will only add some words based on what the French School of Political Sciences learns. Fernand Braudel, a great historian on medieval times, he formulated the idea of structures of longer perseverance, structure de longue durée. Based on analysis of countries, independent on certain individual actions, he detected long lines, how some countries were more based on trades, countries other were more based on warriors. And this is something that gives us also this tool of predicting the behavior, because what we all learned from the past shapes also our minds, how we shape future. And this is why these ideas are also so helpful, because they limit the scope of disruption from the system. But there are times of geopolitics of emotions. Another great French scientist, Dominique Moisy, has formulated this idea, geopolitics of emotions. And there are periods, as now, that we see also how much emotions do play a role in international relations, despite of reasoning, despite of great formulas. So we need to look at various ways of how people do act.
And we have time for one very quick question. So, okay.
Thank you very much for giving me the honor to raise the last question. Hello, first of all, my name is Sun Le Hoang. I'm in my first year of international relations, close to the Dutch border in a small German town. Of course, I would also like to express my deepest gratitude for you all to be here. The question I would like to raise is, in ongoing global conflicts, how do diplomats balance neutrality with moral clarity and integrity, especially when national interest doesn't align with humanitarian urgency? Thank you very much.
So, dear gentlemen who are going to answer this question.
We have no personal integrity.
Yeah, but maybe Your Excellency.
No, sorry for taking the micro. Without personal integrity, we will not have credibility. So this is something that we need also to focus on. If you wish to engage with others, you wish others to listen to you and to trust you, you need to act with integrity. You may explain interests of a country. Every diplomat is in his professional life confronted with a situation that we do not agree with instructions we are receiving. This is probably the nature of your question, yeah? How to deal with instructions that we do not completely agree with. They are ways of showing it to your partners. I was on several occasions, as I was representing Poland at the European Union, confronted with instructions that I considered wrong. But these were instructions from my government. But it is enough to say, my instruction says me, and you quote the instructions. So your partners understand that this is the position of your government, but you do not necessarily identify with this instruction. But nevertheless, this is an instruction. As being professional diplomats, you cannot avoid fulfilling instructions. You may probably argue with your capital, hoping to change the position of the capital, but instruction is a result of a collective work of your government, and we should not put ourselves beyond our government and change our instructions. But you may also find ways in presenting the instruction to signal to the colleagues this is something that my government says, not necessarily me completely agreeing with it.
Yes, yes, completely. It's as the ambassador of Poland just represented it. It's like that. How it works. You're in a negotiation, or you're on a round of different statements, and then it just depersonalize the way in which you're referring to the audience. Instead, the government of Chile, in this case, thinks that blah blah blah. And for us around the table who already know the codes, they will know that I'm not talking just only personally, but more in terms of the government. That's on practical tips, so to say, or practical usance if you are in the diplomatic scenario. But if you think in a larger terms, if you're thinking about becoming a diplomat, for instance, and then you see, okay, would I align with the principles of this foreign policy? That is a good question that you have to ask yourself, because some countries and some foreign policies might be shocking for you, or even that you will be opposing to that. I think if you are devoting yourself to diplomacy, you have to have some kind of alignment to that. Not 100%, but if you have a very core distinction of what is stated as the foreign policy of your country, then you have to think twice if you want to join the diplomatic academy. In our case, for good, we have, so to say, a foreign policy that is more a state foreign policy. So regardless if it's a government from the right or from the left, those elements continue there. So it is not so complicated, so to say. The emphasis, they will change, of course. Maybe now we have a feminist foreign policy because this government has determined to have that. Next government may not have a feminist foreign policy, and it's part of democracy. But what I can tell you is that gender topic will remain, because gender, it is a topic for our society that is crossover. Climate change as well. That is something, you can have some kind of climate deniers, really small ones, they're not even 1,000. But climate change, it's part of the society, from the right, from the left, from the up, from the down. So therefore, climate foreign policy for us, it is important. So if you do this analysis, also historically, again, if the country is changing the foreign policy from one ideal to the other, one principle to the other, then you can see that it's volatile. Then you have to think a little bit further. But if it's constant, it's consequent, and it's there, then I would say stick to those principles. They will change a little bit, but they will not affect your personal values. And therefore, you have kind of a good sailing through those waters.
Thank you very much. I think that we can park in that way, however, because we don't have any time to discussion. So now I would like to ask Manolis to summarize our session and conclude that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was very insightful and very important for us to see actually the importance of that international dialogue in the European and the international community and the challenges that diplomacy faces. I would like to thank all of you for coming here with us today and for your general support in our initiative, whether through the presidency of the Council of the EU for the Polish ambassador, or with a lot of other contribution you made for us through this journey. There'll be a bit time of a small casual talk within our participants in case they have some questions for you, if you like. And then we will go to our reception, to our gala night, and we hope we will see most of you in there, so we can talk more about the European Union and about the position of youth in that sense. Thank you very much for everything you've done for us.